Survivor guilt is a mental condition that occurs when a person perceives themselves to have done wrong by surviving a traumatic event and others did not. It may be found among survivors of murder, terrorism, combat, natural disasters, epidemics, among the friends and family of those who have died by suicide, and in non-mortal situations such as among those whose colleagues are laid off. The experience and manifestation of survivor's guilt will depend on an individual's psychological profile. When the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders (IV) was published, survivor guilt was removed as a recognized specific diagnosis, and redefined as a significant symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. History. Survivor guilt was first identified during the 1960s. Several therapists recognized similar if not identical conditions among Holocaust survivors. Similar signs and symptoms have been recognized in survivors of traumatic situations including combat, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, air crashes and wide-ranging job layoffs. A variant form has been found among rescue and emergency services personnel who blame themselves for doing too little to help those in danger, and among therapists who may feel a form of guilt in the face of the patient's suffering. Stephen Joseph, a psychologist at the University of Warwick, has studied the survivors of the capsizing of the MS Herald of Free Enterprise, which killed 193 of the 459 passengers. His studies showed that 60% of the survivors suffered from survivor guilt. Joseph went on to say, there were three types. First, there was guilt about staying alive while others died. Second, there was guilt about the things they failed to do. These people often suffered post-traumatic intrusions as they relived the event again and again. Third, there were feelings of guilt about what they did do, such as scrambling over others to escape. These people usually wanted to avoid thinking about the catastrophe. They didn't want to be reminded of what really happened. Sufferers sometimes blamed themselves for the deaths of others, including those who died while rescuing the survivor of whom the survivor tried unsuccessfully to save. Survivor syndrome. Survivor syndrome, also known as concentration camp syndrome, are terms which have been used to describe the reactions and behaviors of people who have survived massive and adverse events, such as the Holocaust, the rape of Nanking, and the HIV/AIDS epidemic. They are described as having a pattern of characteristic symptoms including anxiety and depression, social withdrawal, sleep disturbance and nightmares, physical complaints and mood swings with loss of drive. Commonly such survivors feel guilty that they have survived the trauma and others, such as the family, friends, and colleagues, did not. Both conditions, along with other descriptive syndromes covering a range of traumatic events, are now subsumed under post-traumatic stress disorder. Examples: Waylon Jennings was a guitarist for Buddy Holly's band and initially had a seat on the ill-fated aircraft on the day the music died on the 3rd of February, 1959, but Jennings gave up his seat to the sick J.P. Big Bopper Richardson, only to learn later of the plane's demise. When Holly learned that Jennings was not going to fly, he said, "Well, I hope your bus freezes up." Jennings responded, "Well, I hope your plane crashes." Quote, this exchange of words, though made in jest at the time, haunted Jennings for the rest of his life. Jennings, who later became a country music star, expressed survivor's guilt about Richardson's death. Holocaust survivor Primo Levi, haunted by his experiences in Auschwitz, explored his survivor's guilt extensively in his autobiographical books, notably in I Sono Cei Salvati. His His death was reportedly a suicide, and towards the end of his life he suffered from depression, possibly induced by his experiences. In 1945, the USS Indianapolis got torpedoed by a Japanese sub and sank in the Philippine Sea. Most of the crew survived the sinking but were left adrift for days. Only 317 survived the whole ordeal. The captain of the USS Indianapolis, Charles B. McVeigh III, was court-martialed for hazarding his ship. Despite the captain of the Japanese sub standing up for McVeigh, he was convicted of gross negligence. Living with survivor's guilt and hate mail for years, McVeigh killed himself in 1968. In an interview on Lifetime TV's Unsolved Mysteries, Lawrence Larry Geller, one of Elvis Presley's closest friends, reported that Elvis, as a twinless twin, was plagued by guilt over the death of his infant brother, Jesse Garon, who was stillborn. Elvis had confided to Geller about his concerns that maybe he had absorbed more than his share of the nutrients while he was developing inside his mother's womb, causing his twin brother to starve to death before he was born. Elvis had also related to Geller about how his mother had tried to comfort her son by assuring him that they would all meet in heaven after their lives on earth were completed.